What happens when you're judged not by your credentials, but by the color of your skin? In one of the world's most exclusive airport lounges, the Harrison family, elegant, accomplished, and holding first-class tickets, is about to find out. A gatekeeper with ice in her veins, Cynthia Vance, looks right through them, sneering that the VIP lane is for real guests only. She has no idea she just insulted a high-ranking diplomat. She has no idea her entire life is about to be dismantled, piece by piece, starting with a single, devastating phone call. The polished marble floors of JFK's Terminal 4 reflected the chaotic dance of 1,000 travelers. But here, in the secluded alcove for Global Horizons Air, the atmosphere was meant to be one of serene exclusivity. A sleek, cobalt-blue carpet hushed the sounds of rolling luggage, leading to a roped-off line designated First Class and Zenith Circle. This was the lane where the Harrison family stood. David Harrison, patriarch, adjusted the knot of his silk tie, a subtle charcoal gray that complemented his tailored navy blazer. He was a tall man, with a presence that was simultaneously imposing and gentle. Beside him, his wife, Dr. Elena Harrison, exuded a sharp, focused intelligence. Her tailored pantsuit was immaculate, even after the long drive to the airport. She was reviewing an email on her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. Their children, Chloe, 16, and Liam, 10, stood just behind them. Chloe, with her headphones resting on her shoulders, observed everything, her eyes sharp and cynical in the way of teenagers who have seen too much. Liam was vibrating with the excitement of the trip, clutching a model airplane. They were flying to London, a new chapter in their lives. They were, by any metric, the picture of understated success. And yet, the woman at the check-in podium, whose name tag read Cynthia Vance, VIP Services Manager, looked straight through them. Cynthia was a woman who prided herself on her discerning eye. She saw herself not as a service agent, but as a gatekeeper. She curated the experience. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun, so tight it seemed to pull the warmth from her face. She smiled brightly at the couple in front of the Harrisons, a florid-faced man in a golf shirt, and his wife. "Enjoy the Zenith Lounge, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. Your gate is 42A. Champagne is waiting." The Petersons moved on. David Harrison stepped forward, placing his family's 4 dark blue diplomatic passports on the marble counter. "Good evening, Harrison, party of 4. Checking in for flight 2:20 to Heathrow." Cynthia Vance did not look at the passports. She didn't even look at David's face. Her gaze drifted over his shoulder to the next family in line, a white family, fumbling with their carry-ons. "Sir," Cynthia said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension, "I'm sure you've made a mistake. This is the priority lane." David's smile remained, but it didn't touch his eyes. "Yes, we're flying first class. The passports and ticket confirmations are right here." Cynthia finally lowered her eyes to the counter, her lip curling slightly as she saw the dark blue of the diplomatic passports. She picked one up as if it were distasteful. She typed David's name into her terminal, slowly, deliberately. Her face soured. The computer screen clearly showed their booking. Harrison, David, X4. Cabin. First class suite. Connecting. Diplomatic protocol. This was not the result she wanted. The computer had betrayed her assumptions. She tapped her acrylic nail on the screen. "Well," she said, her voice hardening, "the system is showing a verification issue. There appears to be a flag on your booking." David Harrison, who had negotiated complex trade policies and stared down hostile foreign ministers, recognized the tactic instantly. It was the soft wall, the polite, bureaucratic no. "A flag? Elena stepped forward, sliding her phone into her pocket. Her voice was clear and precise, like a scalpel. "What kind of flag?" "We confirmed with the Embassy Protocol Office just this morning." Cynthia recoiled slightly from Elena's directness. She disliked being challenged, especially by someone she had already categorized as other. "It's an internal matter," Cynthia snapped, her customer service veneer cracking. "It simply means I cannot check you in here. You'll need to go to the main economy check-in desks and have them resolve your ticketing problem." She gestured vaguely toward the main terminal, a sea of noise, long lines, and stressed-out families. It was a clear and deliberate dismissal. "I can assure you," David said, his voice dropping to a low, patient rumble, "we do not have a ticketing problem. We are guests of the US Embassy in London. I would appreciate it if you would either check us in or call your direct supervisor." Cynthia's eyes narrowed into slits. The word embassy had been weaponized against her by people trying to scam their way into the lounge before. She wasn't falling for it. "Sir, I am the supervisor," she lied, "and I am telling you, this lane," she tapped the velvet rope, "is for our first-class passengers. It's for our real guests, not for people with flagged tickets." The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. "Real guests." Chloe flinched, as if slapped. Liam looked up at his father, his brow furrowed. "Dad, isn't this our line? We have the big seats." "It's all right, Liam," David said, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. But before he could speak again, a new voice joined the conflict. A man behind them in line, Mr. Reginald Sloane, dressed in an aggressively expensive suit, huffed impatiently. "Good grief, Cynthia," Sloane boomed, clearly irregular. "What's the hold-up? Just move these people along. Some of us are actual Zenith Circle members and have a schedule to keep." Cynthia beamed at Sloane, finding her ally. "My apologies, Mr. Sloane. I'm trying to redirect this family to the correct line, but they're being uncooperative." Uncooperative. Elena's voice was dangerously quiet. "We presented valid first-class tickets and diplomatic passports. You are refusing to honor them. That is not uncooperative. That is a breach of contract." Cynthia saw the confrontation escalating, and she decided to end it. She picked up her desk phone. "Security. I have a family causing a disturbance at the first-class check-in, Terminal 4. They are refusing to leave the priority lane." David Harrison looked at her, his patience finally snapping. "You are making a monumental mistake, Ms. Vance." Chloe, seeing the look on her father's face and the smug malice on Cynthia's, discreetly unlocked her phone. She angled it just right, nesting it in her hand, and pressed record. The air in the premium alcove grew thick and static. Mr. Sloane, the other passenger, crossed his arms, tapping his Rolex impatiently, clearly enjoying the show. He saw himself as a defender of the exclusive world he'd paid to be a part of. "Just go, for heaven's sake," Sloane muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Why do people always have to make a scene? Trying to get something for free, it's disgraceful." "We're not trying to get anything for free," Chloe snapped, her voice trembling but fierce. "We paid for these tickets. My dad is—" "Chloe, not now," David interrupted, his voice a low command. He would not, under any circumstances, allow his children to be drawn into this. He would not plead his case to a check-in agent and a smug bystander. The security guard who arrived was not an armed officer, but a standard airport employee named Frank, who looked more tired than intimidating. He approached the desk, his eyes darting between Cynthia's rigid posture and David's towering, calm demeanor. "Mom, what's the problem?" Frank asked, his hand resting on his radio. "This family," Cynthia said, pointing. "Their tickets are invalid for this lane. I have asked them to move to the main terminal, and they are refusing. They are holding up Mr. Sloane, and my other priority guests. Frank looked at the Harrisons. He saw a well-dressed family. He saw 2 kids. He sighed. This was always the worst part of his job. "Sir, Mum, if the agent says there's a problem with the ticket, you really do have to go to the main desk. I can't let you block the line." "Officer," David said, his tone respectful but firm, "this isn't a ticketing issue. It's a service issue. This agent has refused to properly examine our credentials. We are diplomatic travelers on an official posting." Cynthia let out an exasperated, theatrical sigh. "Oh, everyone's a diplomat. Everyone has a story. Sir, I'm going to ask you one last time to move before I have Officer Frank here escort you." This was the moment. The threat had become physical. Elena, who had been silent, stepped forward. Dr. Elena Harrison was a woman who held life and death in her hands 3 times a week before lunch. She was a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon, and her tolerance for manufactured drama was 0. "Miss Vance," Elena said, her voice so cold it could have formed ice crystals, "I want to be perfectly clear. You have accused us of having fraudulent tickets. You have told us we are not real guests. And now you are threatening to have us escorted away in front of our children. This is not a customer service failure. This is targeted harassment." "It's policy," Cynthia shot back, her face flushing red. She was losing control and knew it. She turned to Frank. "Get them out of here. They're causing a scene." Frank stepped forward, his expression pained. "Sir, please, don't make me do this." David Harrison held up a hand. "There is no need for that, officer. We are not moving, but we are also not the ones causing a scene. Your agent is." He looked past Cynthia, past the glower of Mr. Sloane. "I am going to make one phone call. I suggest you all wait quietly until it is concluded." Cynthia laughed, a short, barking sound. "A phone call? Who are you going to call? The president? Move, or you'll be arrested for trespassing." David ignored her. He pulled his phone from his blazer pocket. He scrolled through his contacts, his thumb moving with unhurried precision. He found the name Abernathy, Giles, London. He pressed the call button. Chloe's phone, still recording, captured the entire exchange. The smug look on Cynthia's face, the impatient sneer of Mr. Sloane, the uncomfortable shuffle of the security guard, and her father's quiet, dignified back as he lifted the phone to his ear. "Giles," David said, his voice calm, as if ordering coffee. "My apologies for the direct call. It's David Harrison. Yes, we're at JFK, Terminal 4, Global Horizons check-in. No, not quite. We've encountered a procedural snag." David listened for a moment. "That's correct. The desk manager, a Ms. Cynthia Vance, has informed us our diplomatic passports are flagged, our first-class tickets are invalid, and that this area is reserved for real guests only. She is currently threatening to have us arrested." He listened again. Yes, I'm afraid so. No, I haven't even shown her the diplomatic visas. She refused to look. Yes, that would be most helpful. We're at the Zenith Circle check-in, just before security. We'll be right here. Thank you, Giles." He hung up. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Cynthia Vance was vibrating with rage. "Are you finished with your little performance? I'm calling the Port Authority. You've had your chance." "I wouldn't do that if I were you," David said softly. "The gentleman I just spoke to is the Deputy Chief of Mission for the U.S. Embassy in London. He is dispatching a protocol team from the consulate. They should be here in, about 10 minutes. I'm sure you'll be happy to explain your real guest policy to them directly." Cynthia's face went from red to a pasty, sickly white. The words consulate and protocol team were not words she could easily dismiss. They carried the weight of government, of power far beyond her tiny airport kingdom. Mr. Sloane, too, seemed to falter, his smugness replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. He's bluffing, Cynthia whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Are you willing to bet your job on that, Ms. Vance? David asked. For the first time, Cynthia was silent. She stood frozen, her hand hovering over the phone, trapped between her own prejudice and the terrifying possibility that she had just insulted someone who mattered. The 10 minutes that followed were the longest of Cynthia Vance's career. The silence in the premium check-in area was absolute, broken only by the distant, muffled announcements for boarding flights. Cynthia stood stiffly behind her podium. She tried to project authority, but a small, nervous tic had developed in her left eyelid. She kept glancing toward the main concourse entrance, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. She could have called her actual supervisor, Mark, who was probably in the lounge, but that would be an admission of failure. She had wanted to handle this. She had handled this. This family was lying. They had to be. Mr. Sloane, for his part, had also gone quiet. He was checking his watch, but the theatrical impatience was gone. He too was now invested in the outcome of this standoff, and a seed of doubt had been planted. What if the black man in the nice blazer wasn't bluffing? Frank, the security guard, had taken 2 steps back. He was now just an observer, his radio silent. He was more than happy to let this play out. Chloe kept her phone steady. She was capturing it all. Cynthia's pale, blotchy face, Mr. Sloane's discomfort, and her parents, who stood as if carved from stone. David was checking his watch, while Eleanor was whispering something to Liam, calming him, distracting him with a story about the Tower of London. Exactly 9 minutes after David hung up, the tide turned. It didn't start with a siren. It started with a subtle shift in the terminal's energy. 2 men in dark, impeccably tailored suits, both wearing clear earpieces, entered the alcove. They were not airport security. They scanned the area with a practiced, dispassionate efficiency. One of them spoke quietly into his wrist. "We have eyes on the Harrison family. We're at the desk." A third man followed, walking with a brisk, authoritative stride. He was in his late 50s, with silver-grey hair and a face that spoke of long hours and serious decisions. This was Giles Abernathy. In his hand, he carried a slim leather folio. He did not look at Cynthia. He did not look at Mr. Sloane. He walked directly to David Harrison and extended his hand, a broad, warm smile instantly erasing the tension from his face. "David." "Elena, my deepest apologies. This is an appalling welcome. I had the protocol car waiting on the tarmac, but I never dreamed we'd have a problem this side of security." "Giles, thank you for coming," David said, shaking his hand. "This is my family. My wife, Eleanor, my daughter, Chloe, and my son, Liam." "A pleasure," Abernathy said, nodding to each of them. "Dr. Harrison, the Royal College of Surgeons is practically counting the minutes until your arrival. And Chloe, Liam, I promise you, London is worth this hassle." He then turned, his smile vanishing, as if a switch had been thrown. His eyes, now chips of blue ice, fell on Cynthia Vance. Cynthia's mouth was open. She looked from David to Abernathy and back, the entire framework of her reality collapsing. "Ms. Cynthia Vance?" Abernathy read her name tag, his voice sharp. Yes. "That's me," she stammered. "I am Giles Abernathy, Deputy Chief of Mission, United States Embassy, London. You are currently, and illegally, detaining our new senior cultural envoy, Mr. David Harrison, and his family." Cynthia's blood ran cold. Senior cultural envoy. It wasn't just a diplomat. It was a high-ranking, named position. The tickets were flagged, she blurted out, her last line of defense. I was just following procedure. Flagged, Abernathy said, his voice dangerously smooth. He opened his folio. That is fascinating, because I am holding the booking confirmation from my office. The only flag on this reservation, Miss Vance, is a Code 5, VIP Diplomatic Protocol. It means your airline is instructed, by treaty agreement, to extend every courtesy and expedite their passage. You have done the precise opposite. He slapped the folio onto the counter. You have denied them entry. You have insulted them. And according to Mr. Harrison, you threatened to have them arrested. No. I meant... Cynthia was drowning. Just then, a man in a rumpled Global Horizons manager's uniform came bustling up. What's going on here? Cynthia, what is... Oh. He saw the dark suits, the earpieces, and the cold fury on Giles Abernathy's face. This was Mark, the real lounge supervisor. Who are you? Abernathy snapped. Mark Dolan. I'm the lounge manager. What's the problem? The problem, Mr. Dolan, Abernathy said, is that your employee, Ms. Vance, has just created a significant diplomatic incident. She has, on the basis of what I can only assume is rank bigotry, refused to check in Mr. Harrison, our cultural envoy. Mark's face went white. He knew what a diplomatic incident meant. It meant congressional inquiries. It meant a cancelled corporate contract with the State Department. Cynthia, Mark whispered, his voice shaking with fury. What did you do? She did what she thought was right, Mr. Sloane interjected, finally finding his voice. He realized he had backed the wrong horse, but doubling down was all he knew. This family was being disruptive, and this lane is for paying customers. She was protecting the lounge's integrity. Abernathy turned his gaze on Sloane. It was a look that could strip paint. And you are? Reginald Sloane. I'm a Zenith Circle million-mile flyer. Are you now? Abernathy mused. And you witnessed this? You heard Miss Vance tell a diplomatic family they weren't real guests? I heard her say the lane was for real guests, yes, and they were making a fuss. I see. Abernathy nodded slowly. He looked at one of his aides. Get Mr. Sloane's full name. We will be including his witness testimony in our formal complaint to the airline. I'm sure Global Horizons will be fascinated to know their million-mile flyers enjoy participating in the harassment of official state guests. Sloane's jaw dropped, the word complaint attached to his name. Cynthia's defense crumbled completely. She burst into tears. I didn't mean it. I thought... They didn't look. She stopped, horrified. But it was too late. The word hung in the air, captured by Chloe's phone. They didn't look. They didn't look the part? Elena Harrison finished for her, her voice a deathly whisper. They didn't look like diplomats? They didn't look like first-class passengers? What exactly do we look like to you, Ms. Vance? Cynthia had no answer. She just sobbed, her carefully constructed world shattered by her own poisoned words. Mark Dolan, the lounge manager, was in full-blown panic mode. He could see his career, his pension, and the airline's reputation dissolving in the acid of Cynthia's tears and Abernathy's cold, bureaucratic rage. Mr. Abernathy, Mr. Harrison, Dr. Harrison, Mark said, his voice high and straining. He was bowing slightly, a gesture of complete supplication. On behalf of Global Horizons Air, I offer our most profound, our deepest apologies. This is not our standard. This is not who we are. This is a grotesque misunderstanding. It is no misunderstanding, Mr. Dolan, Abernathy said, cutting him off. It is a clear-cut case of discrimination. Your VIP Services Manager, he spat the title like a curse, used her authority as a weapon against a protected diplomatic family. The misunderstanding was entirely hers. Yes, of course, Mark agreed quickly. He turned on Cynthia with the ferocity of a cornered animal. Cynthia, hand me your badge, your airport credentials. Now. Cynthia looked up, her face a mess of running mascara and disbelief. What, Mark? No, it was a mistake. I'm stressed. The shift. Your badge, he roared. The quiet, subservient manager was gone, replaced by a man saving his own skin. You are suspended, effective immediately. Go to the central HR office. Do not speak to anyone. Do not pass. Go. Get out. Trembling, her hands shaking so violently she could barely unclip it, Cynthia removed her ID badge. The plastic card that gave her power, that made her the gatekeeper, was now just a piece of plastic. She held it out to Mark, who snatched it from her grasp. Go! Now! Mark yelled. Cynthia Vance, the woman who had, 10 minutes prior, held the power to arrest a family, was now forced to walk, badgeless and sobbing, past the velvet rope, through the main terminal. She had to take the walk of shame, a pariah in her own domain, while other airline employees stared. Frank, the security guard, simply watched her go, shaking his head. The immediate threat was gone, but the situation was far from resolved. Abernathy turned back to Mark. A good first step, Mr. Dolan. But we are far from finished. This family has been publicly humiliated. They have been threatened. Their children are upset. A suspension is not karma. It's HR procedure. What happens next? Anything, Mark pleaded. Mr. Harrison, please. We will escort you personally. Your bags. Our bags are here, David said, pointing to their luggage. Right, of course. Mark flagged down 2 porters. Take these bags. Tag them first-class priority. Diplomatic. Handle with extreme care. He was sweating profusely. We will take you directly to our presidential suite in the Zenith Lounge. Champagne, food, anything you want. It's yours. Free of charge, of course. We've already paid for first class, Elena reminded him, her voice dry. That's not a gift. Of course, Dr. Harrison, of course. I just mean, we will upgrade your comfort. Mark was floundering. Abernathy stepped in. Here is what will happen, Mr. Dolan. You will escort the Harrison family to your best private suite. You will ensure their luggage is the first off the plane in London. You will arrange for a private car to meet them at the gate upon arrival. And you will be taking a full, formal statement from me and from Mr. Harrison. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And him, Abernathy said, gesturing with his chin toward Reginald Sloane, who was trying to blend into the blue carpet. Sloane flinched. Now see here, I'm just a passenger. I have a flight to catch. You're a witness, Abernathy corrected, and an active participant. You encouraged this. He looked at Mark. Mr. Dolan, what are you going to do about Mr. Sloane? Mark looked at Sloane, a million-miler who paid thousands of dollars a year, and then at Abernathy, a man who could cost the airline millions with a single report. The choice was easy. Mr. Sloane, Mark said, his voice now regaining a fraction of its managerial authority. Your conduct has been deemed inappropriate. You actively contributed to the harassment of our diplomatic guests. That's preposterous, Sloane blustered. I'm your best customer. I demand to be checked in. We will check you in, sir, Mark said, a malicious little smile playing on his lips. However, given the circumstances, and to ensure the comfort of our other first-class passengers, we are exercising our right as a carrier to change your seat assignment. Change it? Change it to what? You're being moved to the main cabin, sir. Seat 42E. It's a middle seat, non-reclining, by the lavatory. Sloane's face turned a shade of purple, that clashed violently with his expensive suit. You can't. I paid for a first-class suite. This is theft. It's breach of contract. I'll sue." "You do that, sir," Mark said, clearly enjoying this one small victory. "You can discuss it with our legal team after you land. In the meantime, you can either accept seat 42E or you can be removed from the flight entirely for disruptive behavior. Your choice." Sloan, defeated and utterly humiliated, knew he was beaten. To be downgraded from first class to a middle seat in economy was, in his world, a fate worse than death. He snatched his ticket from the counter, his eyes burning with hatred, and stormed off toward the main security line, not even gracing the priority lane he had fought so hard to protect. "Good," Abernathy said with grim satisfaction. He turned to David and Elena. "Now, let's get you, your children, and this young filmmaker," he winked at Chloe, who blushed and finally lowered her phone, "to a place where you can relax. Mr. Dolan, lead the way." As the Harrisons were personally escorted past the empty podium, Chloe looked back. Her video file was 12 minutes long, crystal clear, and had perfect audio. As they walked, she discreetly tapped "Upload." While the Harrison family was being settled into the presidential suite of the Zenith Lounge, a private soundproof room with its own staff, vintage champagne, and a full hot buffet, the digital bomb Chloe had lit was beginning to detonate. She hadn't posted it to her personal, private Instagram. She had sent the file to a massive, public X, formerly Twitter account, known for chronicling public meltdowns and corporate malfeasance. She had included a simple caption: "My family, JFK Terminal 4. Global Horizons Air Staff, Cynthia Vance, told my father, a US diplomat, that his first-class family wasn't real guests and tried to have us arrested. Watch what happens when her boss shows up." Global Horizons Air, Escorts Airport Racism, JFK. The video, edited by the account's admin for maximum impact, started with Cynthia's line, "Reserved for our real guests." It showed David's calm, "I am going to make one phone call." It included Sloane's "standards are dropping" comment. And most damnably, it featured Cynthia's tearful, career-ending admission. I thought, they didn't look." Before the Harrisons had even finished their first glass of sparkling apple juice for the kids and champagne for the adults, the video had 100,000 views. By the time their flight was called for boarding, it had 1 million. The airline's corporate PR team, based in Chicago, was scrambling. Their phones were lighting up. News agencies, CNN, BBC, the New York Times were all calling. Global Horizons Air was the #1 trending topic on X. Inside the lounge, Mr. Davies, the airline's regional vice president for the entire East Coast, had arrived. He had driven, sirens blaring, from his home in Connecticut. He was a man who normally dealt with new route logistics and million-dollar contracts, and he was now personally apologizing to a 10-year-old boy. "Mr. Harrison, Dr. Harrison," Davies said, his face pale and his hands clasped. "I cannot express the depths of my personal and professional shame. Ms. Vance's employment has been terminated. Terminated, not suspended. Mr. Dolan has been placed on administrative leave for his failure of oversight." "And Mr. Sloan?" Elena asked, her arms crossed. "Mr. Sloan," Davies said, consulting his phone, "has had his Zenith Circle status permanently revoked. He is banned from Global Horizons Air for life. His middle seat is the last flight he will ever take with us." "That's a start," David said. He looked not at Davies, but at Giles Abernathy. "Giles, the complaint stands. This isn't about one bad employee. It's about a culture that allowed her to flourish." "Our complaint is already filed with the State Department," Abernathy confirmed. They will be in touch with your airline's general counsel before you land in London." Davies nodded, swallowing hard. "We understand. We will cooperate fully. A full, top-to-bottom review of our sensitivity and de-escalation training will begin Monday. I promise you that." The flight to London was, predictably, flawless. The first-class flight attendants, who had all seen the video, treated the Harrisons with a reverence bordering on fear. They were the most famous and most feared passengers on the plane. But the real karma was just getting started. We follow Cynthia Vance. She didn't just get fired. When she arrived at the central HR office, she was met not by a counselor, but by the airline's legal team. They informed her she was being terminated for cause, citing gross misconduct, violation of federal anti-discrimination laws, and breach of the International Air Transport Association, IATA, agreements on diplomatic passage. This meant she was ineligible for severance. She was ineligible for unemployment benefits. She went home to her small apartment in Queens, opened her laptop, and saw her face everywhere. She was JFK Karen. She was Cynthia the Gatekeeper. There were memes. There were remixes of her saying, "They didn't look," her full name, her photo. It was all public. By the next morning, her apartment building's address had been leaked online. She was a digital pariah. We follow Mr. Reginald Sloane. He landed in London after 7 hours of humiliation in seat 42E. He turned on his phone, expecting a barrage of angry emails from the airline. He got something worse. He was a high-level partner at a prestigious, old-money private equity firm in London. His firm's managing director had already seen the video, sent by a dozen different clients. Sloane, sneering about standards dropping while a black family was being harassed, was not the look the firm wanted. An email was waiting for him. "Reginald, do not come into the office tomorrow. We have cleared out your desk. Your personal effects will be couriered to your home. We are activating the morality clause in your partnership agreement. Consider this your formal notice." He wasn't just fired. He was expelled from his own company. The million-mile flyer had lost his job, his reputation, and his airline status. All because he couldn't stand to wait an extra 5 minutes in a line. The Harrisons landed at Heathrow to a full diplomatic welcome. A black car with diplomatic plates was waiting on the tarmac, just as Abernathy had promised. There was no customs, no baggage claim. They were whisked away to their new, beautiful residence in St. John's Wood. Their arrival was news, but not for the reason they expected. The BBC Evening News led with the story, "New US cultural envoy arrives in London after appalling incident of racial profiling at JFK." Global Horizons Air was in full-blown corporate meltdown. The video, which Chloe had never intended to be more than a moment of justice, had now been viewed over 150 million times worldwide. It was a case study in corporate disaster. The next day, the CEO of Global Horizons Air, a man named Arthur Kensington, had to make a public statement. He looked exhausted and terrified. "What the Harrison family endured is unacceptable," Kensington said, reading from a teleprompter. "It is a betrayal of our values and of the trust our passengers place in us. We have apologized to the Harrison family and the US State Department, but apologies are not enough." He announced 3 things. 1. Global Horizons Air was making an immediate $10 million donation to the NACP Legal Defense Fund in the Harrison family's name. 2. They were grounding their entire 20,000-person-strong global customer-facing staff for a mandatory 1-day implicit bias and cultural dignity training, a move that would cost the airline an estimated $40 million in lost revenue. 3. They were creating a new executive position, Chief of Passenger Experience and Equity, and a permanent external civilian oversight board to review all discrimination complaints. The stock price of Global Horizons, GHA, had dropped 9% in 24 hours, wiping out over $800 million in shareholder value. This was no longer just karma for Cynthia. This was a systemic reckoning. We revisit Cynthia Vance 2 months later. Her life was in ruins. She couldn't leave her apartment without being recognized. "There she is! The airport racist!" someone shouted at her in a grocery store. She tried to get a job at another airline. She was laughed out of the interview. "You are Cynthia Vance," the Delta manager said. "Do you really think we would hire you? You're the most toxic asset in the travel industry." She tried to sue Global Horizons for wrongful termination, claiming she was a scapegoat. The airline's lawyers simply played Chloe's video in the preliminary hearing. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning she could never file it again. She was broke, unemployable, and had become the very thing she despised, a person with no status, no privilege, and no future. We revisit Reginald Sloane, his morality clause firing held. His partners, eager to distance themselves from him, bought out his shares at the lowest possible valuation. He lost millions. His wife, appalled and publicly humiliated, left him. He was forced to sell his London flat and move to a smaller, nondescript apartment. He, who had defined his entire life by his first-class status, was now flying budget airlines in the middle seat, for real. The karma was not a lightning bolt. It was a slow, agonizing, and complete dismantling of the lives they had built on a foundation of arrogance and prejudice. 6 months in London had transformed the Harrison family. The incident at JFK, far from being a shadow that followed them, had become an unlikely, powerful introduction. Their new life in the elegant, white stucco residence in St. John's Wood was not just comfortable, it was charged with a new sense of purpose. David, as the senior cultural envoy, found his work amplified. He was no longer just another diplomat. In British government and cultural circles, he was the man who held his ground, a symbol of quiet, unshakable dignity. When he spoke about the bridges of art and education between the two nations, his words carried a unique weight. He had, in that 12-minute video, demonstrated the very character he was meant to represent. Dr. Elena Harrison, similarly, was a sensation at the Royal College of Surgeons. Her British colleagues, known for their reserve, treated her with a mixture of professional awe for her surgical skills and profound personal respect. She was the woman who had looked pure, unadulterated privilege in the eye and refused to blink. Liam, now happily enrolled in the American school in London, was thriving. The airport trauma had faded, replaced by the excitement of double-decker buses and castles, though his parents noticed he was now more observant, his eyes quicker to catch injustice in the schoolyard. But the most profound change was in Chloe. The girl who had instinctively hit record had found her voice, and she discovered it was a canon. The accidental filmmaker had become a deliberate advocate. She launched a YouTube channel and blog, a platform she aptly named "They Didn't Look the Part." It exploded. She had a new video every week, not of public Karens, but of quiet, insidious stories of everyday bias. Her platform became a voice for those who had been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. This week she featured a story of a young, brilliant software engineer of Indian descent who was repeatedly mistaken for IT support at his own product launch. Next, she interviewed a black university professor who was asked for his ID by campus security 3 times in one day. Chloe's sharp, empathetic commentary and high production values made her a star. She was pioneering her own form of digital diplomacy, and it was reaching millions. One rainy London evening, David sat in his study, a cup of tea steaming beside him. He was paging through a stack of industry journals when the cover of Global Travel Weekly caught his eye. The headline read, "The GHA Reckoning, How One Viral Video Changed Airline Training Forever." He opened it, his heart beating a little faster. The article detailed, in stunning precision, the financial fallout, the $800 million stock drop, the $40 million cost of the one-day shutdown, the $10 million donation. But it was the centerfold that made him stop. It was a diagram, a corporate flowchart for a new, mandatory, multi-week training program that Global Horizons and several of its competitors were now legally required to adopt. It was called the HARRISON Protocol. Honor the passengers' documentation. Acknowledge their stated status. Respect their questions. Refrain from assumptions. Investigate discrepancies discreetly. Solve the problem with a supervisor. Offer apology and restitution. Notify security only as a last resort for violence. He stared at his own name, turned into a corporate acronym, a tool for de-escalation. It was the most surreal moment of his entire career. Elena came into the study, holding her own cup of tea. "What are you reading so intently? You look like you've seen a ghost." He turned the magazine and showed her. Elena's eyebrows shot up. She read the acronym, a slow, ironic smile spreading across her face. The HARRISON Protocol. My goodness, they're thorough, aren't they? "The ambassador to the UK mentioned it to me last week," David said, his voice quiet. "He said that in 20 years of foreign service, he'd never seen one diplomat's family affect such a rapid and widespread change in corporate policy. Not with memos, not with sanctions. But we did it, by being denied check-in." Elena came and stood behind his chair, placing her hands on his shoulders. "That's because it wasn't a policy memo, David. It was a video of a father protecting his family. It was a mother drawing a line. They mistook your dignity for weakness. That was their final, fatal mistake." She gently touched the side of his head. "You didn't do it with policy. You did it by being exactly who you are. You were patient until you weren't. You were polite until it was time to be powerful." She smiled. "And Chloe?" She aimed the cannon. As if to punctuate the moment, a letter lay on his desk, delivered that afternoon by the embassy courier. It was from the New York law firm that had handled their civil complaint against the airline, a complaint that had been settled swiftly and quietly months ago. This was just a final update. He opened it. It was brief. The firm was closing the file, as the final associated matters were now concluded. Cynthia Vance, Ms. Vance's countersuit for wrongful termination, was dismissed with prejudice. Her subsequent filing for personal bankruptcy was finalized by the state of New York last week. Reginald Sloane. Mr. Sloane's final appeal against his partners at Sloane, Crestwood and Hyde, citing the morality clause, was denied by the High Court of Justice. It was done. The justice was not a single, fiery bolt of lightning. It was the slow, methodical, and complete grinding of the wheels of consequence. Cynthia Vance was broke. Reginald Sloane was an outcast, his name literally stripped from his own company. David didn't smile. He didn't feel a rush of victory. He simply folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. It was not a trophy. It was a receipt. A somber, final acknowledgement that the scales had been balanced. Their lives had been rebuilt, stronger than before, while the lives of those who tried to tear them down had been permanently dismantled by the very arrogance they held so dear. A year had passed. The cherry blossoms in London's Regent's Park had bloomed, faded, and were budding once more. The Harrisons were traveling again, this time for a cultural summit in Rome, where David was the keynote speaker. The choice of airline had been a brief, pointed family discussion. "Global Horizons?" Chloe had asked, her fork clattering onto her plate. "Seriously, Dad? After everything?" David had folded his hands. "That's exactly why, Chloe. You don't defeat a dragon and then avoid its lair forever. You go back, look it in the eye, and make sure it's learned its lesson. We aren't just a family. We're a data point. I want to see what their new system does with us when we're not a news story, just passengers." Elena had nodded, a small, supportive smile on her lips. "He's right. Besides, they're the only airline with a direct, first-class flight at the time we need. It's pragmatic, so here they were, back on the familiar, plush, cobalt blue carpet of a Global Horizons premium check-in, this time at Heathrow. The polished marble gleamed. The scent of faint, expensive perfume hung in the air. It was a perfect mirror of the scene at JFK, and for a split second, David felt a tightening in his chest. Liam instinctively moved a little closer to his mother. Chloe, ever watchful, had her phone in her hand, though it remained by her side. They stepped up to the podium. The agent was a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, with kind eyes, and a name tag that read Sarah. Sarah looked up, and her professional smile faltered for a half-second as her eyes widened. It was not the flash of fear or confusion they had seen in Cynthia Vance. It was pure, unfiltered recognition. "Oh," she breathed. Then, composing herself, she broke into a smile so wide and genuine it lit up her entire face. "Mr. Harrison, Dr. Harrison, and you must be Chloe and Liam. Welcome, welcome to Global Horizons. It is a genuine honor to have you fly with us today." David, prepared for anything from polite efficiency to lingering awkwardness, was taken aback by the warmth. "Thank you, Sarah. We're pleased to be here. We have your booking right here," she said, gesturing to her screen but never looking at it. "Flight 312 to Rome. We have the private suite in the Olympus Lounge reserved for you, of course. Your seats are 1A, 1B, 1D, and 1F, just as you requested. May I take your luggage? I'll have them tagged with the envoy priority." She worked quickly, her hands moving with an efficiency that was warm, not brittle. As she affixed the last tag, she leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a confidential but proud whisper. "I just want to say thank you. I'm newish. I graduated from the first class to complete the HARRISON protocol training. I was in the room when your video was shown." Elena looked at her, impressed. "They show the whole video." "They do?" Sarah said, blushing slightly. "They call it the Day 1 inoculation. They want us to see what happens when the system fails, when people fail, your family's experience. It's literally the core of our training. Module 3 is the guest, not the assumption. It's all because of you. You didn't just change the company. You changed our jobs. We are all so grateful." David Harrison, the man who had faced down hostile ministers, felt a knot in his throat. He simply nodded, a deep sense of completion settling over him. "Thank you for telling us, Sarah. That means a great deal." "My pleasure. Let me escort you to the lounge entrance." As they walked, they passed another check-in desk. An elderly Sikh man in a magnificent white turban was speaking in halting English, confused about his connecting gait. The agent, instead of showing impatience, had come out from behind the desk. He was kneeling slightly, pointing patiently to the man's boarding pass, and then to a map, speaking slowly and clearly. Chloe saw it. David saw it. They exchanged a look. It was a small moment, one that would have never been remarkable before. But now, It felt like a revolution. They were settled into the private lounge, a beautiful room with a view of the tarmac. The quiet hum of the airport was a distant lullaby. After a few minutes, Liam, who was drinking an orange juice, tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad?" "Yes, son." "Is she nice to us because you're famous from the video?" David looked at his son, now 11, and so much taller than he had been that day at JFK. He paused, gathering his thoughts. He looked out the window at the massive jets, symbols of connection, and, sometimes, of division. He crouched down, meeting Liam's eyes. "She's nice to us, Liam, because a woman at another airport, a long time ago, taught everyone in this company a very hard, very expensive lesson about what happens when you forget your humanity." "The not real guests lesson?" Liam asked quietly. "That's the one," David said. "She thought her job was to be a gatekeeper, to decide who looked the part. But that's not the job. Not for an airline, not for a diplomat, not for anyone." He gestured to the main lounge beyond their private door, where the diverse crowd of travelers mingled. People in suits, people in tracksuits, families, solo travelers, people of every imaginable color and creed. "There are no real guests or fake guests, Liam. There are only people. People trying to get from one place to another. You treat every single one of them with dignity. You don't do it because of who they are, or what they're wearing, or how much money they have. You do it because of who you are. That's the only standard that matters." David smiled, the last bit of tension from that day, a year ago, finally unspooling from his shoulders. He stood up and offered his hand to his wife. "Come on," he said, his voice full of a lightness he hadn't realized was missing. "Our flight is waiting." They walked out of the suite, together. No longer detainees, no longer problems, no longer a cause or a scandal. They were just the Harrison family, on their way to their next adventure, leaving a trail of hard-won, permanent and healing change in their wake. And so, the story of the Harrison family comes to a close. It's a powerful reminder that prejudice and arrogance, like that of Cynthia Vance and Reginald Sloane, carry a heavy price. The hard, cold karma they faced wasn't instant, but it was absolute. They didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their reputations, their status, and their futures, all because they judged a family by the color of their skin and not the content of their character. The Harrisons didn't just win a battle, they changed the entire system, proving that standing your ground with dignity can have echoes that reshape the world. What did you think of Cynthia's and Sloane's karma? Was it too harsh, or was it exactly what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this story, please like this video and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of drama, twists, and real-life karma.